other boon which may be obtained by use to me of any other boon besides this.
Is kissed again and again by Mother Yashoda.
Who is immersed in an ocean of worldly sorrows and
Damodar ki, Sodamai ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Go Premananda. So, this is an interesting day because Charupa came to Mangalartik and played the Mridanga. First time in a while. That was fun. And Prishni's been coming more and more and singing, so it's great. She was a regular right there, always right there. Okay, I don't want to jinx it. So it's really nice. And so we're still in the third canto, chapter 12. I was going to read 3 verses, but I think I'll just do 2 and leave one for a good one for my board to do. Even though the third one kind of fits into this whole thing. And what I'll chant the Sanskrit for 32, and then we can chant together, and then I'll read it, and then I'll read 33, and in the purport, I'll just read the Sanskrit, and then I'll talk a little bit about that. So, something in the proximity of that particular verse and purport. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Narayanam Namaskritya.
Narayanam Namaskritya.
Chaiva Narottamam.
Naram Chaiva Narottamam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Devim Saraswatim Vyasam.
Tato Jayamudiriye.
Tato Jayamudiriye.
Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, we should first offer our respectful obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Narayan, to Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, to Srila Vyasadeva, the author, and to Srila Prabhupada, our spiritual master. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachadane Nirvasesha Sunyavadi Paskatadi Satadane. So, so is this up there? Tasmai Namo Bhagavate?
Yes.
Okay. Tasmai Namo Bhagavate.
Tasmai Namo Bhagavate.
Tasmai Namo Bhagavate.
Tasmai Namo Bhagavate.
Ya idam svena rochisa.
Ya idam svena rochisa.
Ya idam svena rochisa.
Ya idam svena rochisa.
Atmastam yan jayam asha.
Atmastam yan jayam asha.
Atmastam vya jayam asa.
Atmastam yan jayam asa.
Sadharmam patum ahati.
Sardhamam patum ahati.
Sadharmam patum ahati.
Sardhamam patum ahati.
Tasmai Namo Bhagavate.
Tasmai Namo Bhagavate.
Ya idam svena rochisa.
Ya idam svena rochisa.
Astam ya jayam asa.
Atmastam yan jayam asa.
Sadharmam patum ahati.
Sadharmam patum ahati.
Anyone else?
Tasmai Namo Bhagavate.
Tasmai Namo Bhagavate.
Yaridam Swainaro Chisa.
Ya idam svena rochisa.
Atmastam Yanjayam Asa.
Atmastam yan jayam asa.
Sadharmam Patumahati.
Sadharmam patum ahati.
Tasmai Namo Bhagavate.
Tasmai Namo Bhagavate.
Ya idam svena rochisa.
Ya idam svena rochisa.
Atmastam vyanjayamasya.
Atmastam yan jayam asa.
Sadharmam patum arhahiti.
Sadhamam patum ahati. Tasmai Namo Bhagavate.
Tasmai Namo Bhagavate.
Ya idam svena rochisa.
Ya idam svena rochisa.
Atmastam Vyanjayamasya
Atmastam Vyanjayamasya
Sadharmam Patumahati
Sadharmam Patumahati
Tasmai namo bhagavate
Tasmai Namo Bhagavate
idam svena rotisa
Ya Idam Sena Rochisa
atmastam ganjayam asa
Atmastam Vyanjayamasya
adharmam patumarhati
Sadharmam Patumahati.
Someone else? The women?
Tasmai Namo Bhagavate Ya Idam Sena Rochisa Atmastam Vyanjayamasya Sadharmam Patumahati.
Okay, so no one else wants to
I
chant?
think it was someone else.
Okay. This is the word for word. Tasmai.
Tasmai.
Unto him.
Unto him.
Namaha.
Namaha.
Obeisances.
Obeisances.
Bhagavate.
Bhagavate.
Unto the personality of Godhead.
Unto the personality of God.
Ya.
Ya.
Who.
Who.
Idam.
Idam.
This.
This.
Svena.
Svena.
By his own.
By his own.
Ruchisa.
Rochisa.
Effulgence.
Effulgence.
Atmastam.
Atmastam.
Situated in himself.
Situated in himself.
Vyanjayam.
Vyanjayam.
It is also asa.
Asa.
Has manifested.
Has manifested.
Sa.
Sa.
He.
He.
Dharmam.
Dhamam.
Religion.
Religion.
Patum.
Patum.
For protection.
For protection.
Arhati.
Arhati.
May kindly do so.
May kindly do so.
So the translation is, let us offer our respectful obeisances unto the personality of Godhead, who by his own effulgence, while situated in himself, has manifested this cosmos. May he also protect religion from all goodness. Does anyone know who this is speaking?
Could you read it one more time?
Yeah, it's Maitreya.
Read it one more time.
Then we'll do, please repeat. Let us offer our respectful obeisances
Let us offer our respectful obeisances
unto the personality of Godhead,
unto the personality of Godhead,
who by his own effulgence,
who by his own effulgence,
while situated in himself,
while situated in himself,
has manifested this cosmos.
has manifested this cosmos.
May he also protect religion
May he also protect religion
for all goodness.
for all goodness.
Srila Prabhupada's purport.
Who was speaking, you said?
Marichi. He's one of the Pajatis, one of yeah. That's, and I find this is an interesting point. Purport. Lust for sexual intercourse. I'm trying to open my mouth this morning. I had a big manjari.
You got water?
Yeah, I got plenty of water, yeah. Lust for sexual intercourse is so strong that it appears herein that Brahma could not be dissuaded from his determination in spite of the appeal by his great sons, like Marichi. Therefore the great sons began to pray to the Supreme Lord for the good sense of Brahma. It is only by the grace of the Supreme Lord that one can be protected from the allurement of lusty material desires. The Lord gives protection to devotees who are always engaged in transcendental loving service, and by his causeless mercy, he forgives the accidental fall down of a devotee. Therefore, sages like Marichi prayed for the mercy of the Lord, and their prayer was fruitful. Yeah, so this in and of itself is the basis for a really good discussion. And this next part is part of it, so I'll just finish this up. I mean, I actually find this whole pastime, it would be, you could mine a lot of, like have a seminar on how to deal with devotees who have had problems and what to do, what not to do, and because there's been a lot of overreactions, there's been cases where there's been underreactions, and also how to safeguard oneself from. I mean, one of the worst things that can happen to a devotee is that he has become successful in his service, and people are praising him all the time, and then pride comes before the fall. I mean, even materially, people understand this principle. There's so many factors involved, and you start to forget. You're thinking you're the doer. In the Bhagavad Gita, I brought it along just in case I forget a line, but it's Prakriti Kriyamanani Gunai Karma Sarvata Ahankar Vibhudatma Kartaham Iti Manyate. That people think that they're the doers, we're doing things, but actually it's the modes of material nature. We like to take credit when something goes well, but we don't want to take the blame for something that went wrong. But in fact, neither praise nor blame, success or failure, you have to be equiposed in all of it. And so that's the safest road, is to stay humble as a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, and don't expect any respect. And be free with your respect for others. That's one of the points here. And Brahma doesn't seem to have a problem with this concept, because even though he's done this thing, again, it's in his mind. I mean, I was thinking, well, maybe it was just like he was appreciating what the beauty of the woman that he created. Maybe it was just like an appreciation. Oh, look how beautiful she is. But apparently, by the way everybody's reacting, he was a little bit over-appreciative of her, and there was some lust involved. But the way this is all playing out, it's obviously something Prabhupada says that, I think it was on some morning walk, somebody asked Prabhupada about it, and he said, it was just very short, something like, because he's Lord Brahma. That's right. And because, actually, it was something to that effect, that I forget how the question was asked, but Prabhupada just made it very brief. And you see, I mean, can you imagine actually how humiliating that is as a man, that you've all of a sudden lost control of your senses in front of everyone else, especially all your children, and they see you acting in such a bizarre, going after one of your daughters. I mean, that's very embarrassing. And then to come back and after you've been, freed from that, that you're able to function with everyone else. It's very difficult. Like Krishna tells Arjuna, people will speak of your infamy if you leave the battle. And for someone like yourself who's been respected, disrespect is worse than death. It's a very painful thing to be. You have to really be sincere. I mean, you have to really want to be forgiven by the spiritual master. Whatever the other people think, God brothers, God sisters, nieces and nephews, it doesn't matter. You want to come back. I want to get it right. I made a mistake. Now I want to get it right. But on the other side, how do you deal with someone who's in a position of authority, and how they made mistakes, and there's some very interesting examples. Maybe I should just read the next verse and I'll go back over it. Sa itam grinnata putram puro drishva Prajapati patistanvam tayacha vrititas tada samdesho jaguru goram niharam yad vidustasma tama. The father of all Prajapatis, Brahma, after seeing all his Prajapati sons speaking in that way, became very much ashamed and at once gave up the body he had accepted. Later that body appeared in all directions as the dangerous fog in darkness. And it's apropos that around these last couple of weeks or so, we've been getting a clear understanding of the fog. It's like, manifestation of, there's nothing worse than being on the highway. It's raining, it's dark, it's a country road, and it's fog. You can't put on your high beams, you can't not put on your high beams, and then you got some idiot coming at you with the high beams on. You're trying to see, you can't see. Besides the fact, for me, I got a fog in my brain most of the time, so trying to concentrate and focus is compounded. The problems are compounded, and this is the result. This is somehow or other a manifestation. It says he gave up Prabhupada explained it was a subtle body he gives up. It's like a psychic death. He gave up that body. And the remnants of it is fog. And he was in a fog when this happened. It's all part of Krishna's obviously controlling him and using him. That's the point. Like the Prakriti Kriyamana, the material nature is working under his control. And Brahma's a very pious, virtuous soul, the most pious, the most virtuous person in the universe. And that he wouldn't be there if he wasn't highly qualified. So he was capable of this being put to this test. And obviously Krishna was trying to teach us. You can draw from this pastime anything you want. In a sense. I could think of a lot of good reasons of why Krishna is what he's trying to communicate, specifically to males or people that are involved in, doing creative things. But to anyone, male or female, right? To see how you can get caught up in something. But also just being able to understand that sometimes, things happen that are beyond your control. You don't realize it at the moment, and then when you finally catch yourself, it's too late, and now you've made a fool of yourself. That's just what, if you have to be, this, like everyone says, this is an easy process. Just chant the Hare Krishna mantra. Just follow these 4 rules and regulations. Just get up early and chant those 16 rounds. It's very easy. And read these wonderful books and eat great prasadam and sing and dance. But it's not. It's not. Let's put it this way: it's simple, but it's not easy. It's very hard dealing with your false ego. After lifetimes, centuries and centuries of all these different bodies and identities that you've had, even in one lifetime. I can think of so many different. Each stage of my life, I had different identities in a sense, different friends, different relationships, and those things have all come into being and then faded away. They just come into being and then fade like waves, like that. And every now and then, all by yourself, like sometimes you see in a pond or something, if there's something fermenting on the floor, of the pond, all of a sudden something will bubble up. So in our hearts there are lifetimes, crores, hundreds of thousands of desires that we're not even aware of, or reactions to things that we did in the past, and they just bubble up. And especially if you've opened the door just a little bit and made some mistake, like by committing some kind of an aparad accidentally, or you just don't know. You feel like you're being set up sometimes. And I have anyway. Let me read the verse in purport. Did I finish the Sanskrit? Yeah, I think I did. The father of all Prajapatis, Brahma, thus seeing all his Prajapati sons speaking in that way, became very much ashamed and at once gave up the body he had accepted. Later that body appeared in all directions as the dangerous fog in darkness. Purport. the best way to compensate for one's sinful acts is to give up one's body at once. Of course, Prabhupada said not us, because you'd all be dead by now. And Brahma, the leader of the living entities, showed this by, we're not a suicide cult, okay? That's what I'm trying to say. The leader of the living entities showed this by his personal example. Brahma has a fabulous duration of life, but he was obliged to give up his body due to his grievous sin, even though he had merely contemplated it in his mind without having actually done it. In other ages, you actually are responsible for your thoughts. It's not just like saying it or planning it verbally or carrying it out. If you just think it, you get a reaction. It's the same thing. I mean, I don't know. I would forget it. I mean, just no way. I am speaking right out loud. I'm not, I can't hide from the deities, they know. Please. Anyway, but that, the things you think about, thinking, feeling, willing, Prabhupada actually uses the word subconscious. And, there's this whole thing about psychology. And actually the whole Bhagavad Gita, the psychology has to do with, they have different types of, there's two basic main schools. One is behavioral, and the other one was, I think, something like Gestalt or something like that, where one is based on, like, in other words, what are you biologically prone to be a criminal, or is it your environment that makes you that? And so there's two different thoughts, and it's probably a blending of everything. Another one has to do with your karma, and the other one has to do with your karma, because who you're with is your karma, and who you are, in a sense. We are the architect of our own character, our own personality and situation. So that's what we have to concentrate on. And so Brahma's also showing us the strength of what a real leader is. If he makes a mistake, he's not afraid to deal with it. He's not going to blame someone else, like blame the woman. Well, she wasn't dressed provocatively. What am I supposed to do? Or she moved in the wrong way. Well, so it's not like that. You have to be responsible. So, but he was obliged to give his body to be. Now, this is a lesson for the living entities, showing how a sinful an act is to indulge in unrestricted sex life. Even to think of abominable sex life is sinful, and to compensate for such sinful acts, one has to give up his body. I mean, how can you not think about it? It's everywhere. If you're connected to, that's what's good about being on a farm like this. And if you don't have to go into town, you have to see any. And here too, okay, it is southern Mississippi, but you don't have to, like I was in Miami for Gaur Purnima a few years back, and I went to the Miami temple. It was one of the last times I went there. A beautiful temple, beautiful altar. The deities are beautiful. I personally picked them out from Murari Sevak, and they bought them when I was away. They sold it to them. The beautiful Radha Krishna deities. And so I'm with my son was not feeling well, so I was with my daughter-in-law and the mother-in-law and the children. It was us. And I mean, some of the billboards at a bus stop is just, it's X-rated. And you're with your grandchildren. It's ridiculous. You don't see that here as much. I mean, but all you have to do is just go over to New Orleans. I mean, that place, Bourbon Street is just like, when I was working there, I just flew across Bourbon Street. I would get out of my car, and within 5 minutes, I would see all 4 regular principals right in my face. You see a drug deal going on, you see something going on with a man and a woman, and then, gambling, you walk by a bar and you hear, you know, I got 20 to 1, and someone's, you know, everything is going on all the time. And you're right in the mix. It's really thick. And this is a point that I wanted to make, is that I brought this just in case I have the chance to bring it up, that we, just by being in the material world, we're trying to like cleanse ourselves after hundreds of thousands, if not hundreds of millions or billions of lifetimes. We're trying to cleanse ourselves and be in the shower, but by still being here. But the process is so powerful, and Lord Chaitanya's made it so simple for us, just to chant this mantra correctly, and keep clean in your thoughts, in your words, and in your activities, and stay in a good association. Then you can actually become clean enough to enter back into that spiritual atmosphere, that eternal blissful atmosphere that we actually are. We are that. The modes of material nature have infested our minds, where we've got this plague, this tumor, this cancer, and it's grown up around our soul. You know, a big tumor of sin all around us. It may be pious looking, or it may be impious looking, but it's still not connected to Krishna. It's not eternal, it's temporary, but it's almost eternal in the sense that one thing leads to another. So, Brahma, because he's here, and creating these things, occasionally his mind becomes a little bit polluted. And in the 11th canto, there's an example of this with the 4 Kumars. They come up and ask him a question, and his mind, because he's been creating in the mode of passion, he's not clear. So then he takes shelter of the Lord, and the Lord comes to him in the form of a swan, the Hamsa, a Hamsa incarnation. I'll read a little bit of it. I'll just finish this purport. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add right now or say? Okay. Yes?
It may be therefore never placed, but I don't know if I'll get to it. Actually, I wanted to mention it in the class on Monday. But it's not in the Bhagavatam at this point, but there were other sages besides the sons of Brahma who didn't show compassion on him, and they left.
Donna Kelly discussed that.
Yesterday?
Yeah.
Okay, so...
Yeah, and that's what I was wondering. I don't know if I'm repeating anything that I missed Vibhusha's class, which I regret. So I don't know if I'm touching on anything that you talked about or not.
I don't remember.
What do you mean? I have no idea what I just said. And this is coming out of me like, wow. Even there's a story with that one devotee, Shibhuvanath, real ecstatic devotee. And Prabhupada was in London. He tells us in the memories, Siddhanta memories, and he said, and one day after the class, he was noticing every day after the class, Prabhupada would go in his room and he played the tape of his class, and he was listening to it. So finally, he's like, Srila Prabhupada, that's the way he talks. Srila Prabhupada, it's just, I'm wondering, I don't want to be offensive, but why do this in your own class? He says, I'm trying to find out what I said. I don't know what I said. I don't know what Super Soul was saying through me. So, because sometimes somebody would come up to Prabhupada and say, oh, Prabhupada, it was such a great class. I said, oh, really? What did you like the most? What was the best point? Well, just the whole thing, and that point, it was great. Yeah, it was really good. With Krishna and No, really, what was the point? Just you, Prabhupada. And like when you see these things going on, I heard this from Bhakti Vikas recently, that so some Indian man comes in to complain to Srila Prabhupada about some of your disciples, these Westerners, they're too passionate, and I saw two of them actually fighting. And so Prabhupada says, so you're surprised that they're fighting, huh? He goes, yeah. He said, I'm surprised they're chanting Hare Krishna. But there's a lot of examples that I know. I heard Hari Sari tell of an incident with him, with a Bengali in Vrindavan when he was temple commander, before he joined Prabhupada's party. And Prabhupada found out that he had hit this devotee, and he told him, you have to go find him and beg for his forgiveness. And he tried to, he couldn't find him. Then the boy came back, and then everything was rectified in front of Prabhupada. Apologies were made, everybody was happy. And then after that, this was the point that Harisari was making. After that had happened, about 2 months later, he was now Prabhupada's servant. So even though that had happened, Prabhupada didn't hold it against him. One thing I would say real quick is that, and this is the kind of discussion you could have for, like to get, to understand how, we can live together, and how these different things that happened in the past can be applied. Because in every situation it may seem the same, but there's slightly different motives or different lessons to be learned, because there's individuals. See, I just forgot what I was going to say.
You're talking about rectification.
Yeah. Oh, Prabhupada, what he would do is, one GBC man who became sannyasi, and Prabhupada really, really liked his service, did a lot of important service for Srila Prabhupada. And I saw once, even after he had fallen down, the way Prabhupada looked at him, how much Prabhupada loved him, you could see it. And he came back, he asked Prabhupada if he could change his colors. And Prabhupada said, no, you've already taken this vow, you have to stay sannyas. And so what Prabhupada said to him, he says, so this is a mistake. You've made a mistake. But failure is the pillar to success. So now you must come back even more enthusiastic and preach even more enthusiastically, strongly. And now you have direct realization of what can go wrong. And I'm paraphrasing some of this. And now you should speak even more enthusiastically and strongly, and not let this get in your way for progress. And so Prabhupada took him back, but he always had trouble, because I know him pretty well, that it was, he had problems with forgiving himself, whether it's his false ego or, he's just really, eventually you have to get over it. Yeah, I messed up. One person I know, who when he left sannyas, he said, I just cannot go back into the temple and wearing white. It's like a sign of surrender. I surrender to Maya. I can't do it. And, I said, well, no, that's just not the case. Yeah, you have to still, you're not a householder, you're not a sannyasi, you're not a brahmachari. We're spirit souls. We have a relationship with our spiritual master. That's all that matters. But, these things matter. And in our society, at certain points, it was a much bigger thing. If you were sannyasi wearing saffron, and if you were wearing white, it's still there. It's still in our society and there should be more respect given to someone who's seriously taking up the sannyas vow. But it was overemphasized, but that's another issue. So anyway, I didn't finish this purport. Anything else anyone wants to say? Okay, so let me see if I can get through this purport. Showing how sinful is acted. Okay, here it is. Even to think of abominable sex life is sinful, and to contemplate for such sinful acts, one has to give up his body. In other words, one's duration of life, blessings, opulence, etc. That's what he means by giving. You have to. Your duration of life is shut. Your blessings, your opulence is diminished and decreased by the sinful acts. The most dangerous type of sinful act is unrestricted sex. Ignorance is the cause of sinful life, or sinful life is the cause of gross ignorance. The feature of ignorance is darkness or fog. Darkness or fog still covers the whole universe, and the sun is the only counteracting principle. One who takes shelter of the Lord, the perpetual light, has no fear of being annihilated in the darkness of fog or ignorance. So, so there are different other examples of these kinds of, like for instance, so you're saying that not every, so he did say that the Vasus, they were laughing at him. And I was thinking about it because when Marichi's talking, it seems really respectful. And, that is something that I really appreciated, that instead, like, I would envision, like for instance, during the period of time in the middle 80s when the temple presidents, the North American temple presidents, tried to organize and you may say this is not Shastic, but it's actually application of the process and how trying to institutionalize the teachings of Srila Prabhupada, the founder of Acharya, we run into difficulties. So during this period in the middle 80s, after we had begun this experiment called zonal Acharyaism, and it had its merits, but it also had some built-in issues, and especially for temple presidents. And so the temple presidents tried to get together, not to blow it up, but to just make some constructive criticisms that would help everybody out. Like for instance, I can give a brief example. I had one devotee in Atlanta, and she was left there by her husband, and she had a little girl. So, but they had spent time in Vrindavan. Now the husband's out of the picture, so she's in Atlanta for a year and a half, and we're supporting them, taking care of them. And she's making spiritual advancement, and she still wants, so now she's serious, she's 10, 16 rounds, and she's not bothering me about a husband or anything like that, remarriage. She wanted to get initiated. And she wanted to get initiated by another guru that wasn't our zonal guru. And at that time, initially we were Hridayananda, and then later on, we arranged, Vikadar and myself arranged to have a second guru, Jayapataka Swami, which was very highly unusual at that time to have two gurus in the same zone. And but this was the third guru yet. And so I call up the spiritual master and say, this devotee is doing very nicely, and she's very sincere. She's following the regular principles for over a year and a half now. She's turning around, she's coming to classes as much as possible. So I'm recommending her for initiation. But my first question is, can she serve you by staying here in Atlanta? Because I didn't want to lose her. Because I could see that she'd be a good, to be honest, a collector or a book distributor. He said, sure, we're serving Srila Prabhupada. Well, the very night of the initiation, this woman's party from that place came through and went in and took her and said that the only way you can serve your guru is to come with us. And she turned out to be a huge collector for them. And just a small, I mean, not that I was just interested in that, but I thought it was, how am I supposed, how is this temple going to grow if we, you know, they just can't see that, you know, we're all working together as he initially said. Why would I want to spend any time or energy and then they come by and say, well, how come you're not growing? How come you have more devotees? Every time there's some little issue. So there was lots of little things, and some places were really suffering because of this. And but so it started out as a positive thing, and then because we were talking about, we wanted to keep it just on the razor's edge, just the constructive things, and then other people in the movement after the first meeting were really enlivened by it. Older brothers that had been temple presidents or sannyasis that didn't have any engagement, they weren't being engaged, and so they started coming, and they had other issues they wanted to. So it was still going along nicely, but when it crossed the line into personal attacks, that's where everything blew up in everybody's face. Because you, in a situation, like for instance, I'll give you this is a good example. And not related to, but in 1973-74, the GBC of Brooklyn Temple, and he was also BBT trustee. There was only 2 of them or 3 of them at the time. And the devotees knew for over a year that he was breaking the regular principles, even to the point where they found, you know, remnants of, one of them was eating chicken. And nobody said anything. Nobody did anything. And Prabhupada was very angry when he found out. I mean, and there was a lot of things, a lot of abuse going on in that temple. And so Prabhupada was upset that why didn't you say something, especially the serious older devotees, the ones that had been there since the storefront. Why didn't you say something? And work this out. And you know, it was, well, we respected them. We don't want to, you know, do anything that's offensive. So, and I hope I'm not committing offense now, but I'm trying to elucidate an issue, how you deal with these things without being offensive, but at the same time rectifying problems so that things are clear and clean in the environment, the spiritual environment. So that's one example there that stands out. And unfortunately, during that period of time, in the middle 80s, it became really difficult. And then also there's the examples of devotees where Prabhupada would, like a Sanskritist, he would tell them, please remain on the bhakti platform, not on the scholarship platform. When you're translating, don't worry about scholarship, worry about bhakti. And one of them, very prominent, he got caught up in the scholarship. And he became offensive even to Prabhupada, to the point where Prabhupada sent out a 1-sentence letter to all the temples. My disciples, blank, 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 is no longer welcome at any ISKCON temple. He's become an envious black serpent. And this is another point, that is that philosophical fall downs were in a different category, or are in a different category than moral, you know, illicit sex life, intoxication, like that, you know, or someone has a gambling problem, I don't know. That meat eating though, that's pretty, but so that, but philosophical ones, Prabhupada was much more intense. And you can see that even in some other pastimes. But here with Lord Brahma, so Lord Brahma, for some reason, Krishna wanted this pastime to come out. And this was happening, it didn't happen by chance. It obviously is under the direction of the Supreme Personality of God. It wouldn't be in the pages of the Bhagavatam if it was supposed to, you know, it wouldn't have, the disciplic succession wouldn't keep it in there. As a matter of fact, you said they take it out in the Madhvacharya. they take it out. They don't allow it to be there. So it is important to understand these principles. And just one last point is that on a morning walk in Atlanta, one of my godbrothers asked Prabhupada, is it true that the spiritual master will come back for the disciple if he falls down? And Prabhupada said, yes. But then he stopped, put his cane into the ground, put his head back and said, but do not take advantage. In other words, don't think, oh, don't worry about it. I'm good. He's going to come back for me. No, don't take advantage of the spiritual master. Don't make him come back for you. We have to be serious about our vows. If you do make a mistake, what can you do? It's like, you see a child learning how to walk, and when it falls down, you think, this kid will never walk. Look at him. He's bow-legged. He'll never be able to walk. Yeah, just forget about it. And then you get, all right, so maybe he made it for more steps. But then he fell down again. Look at it. You just forget about it. No, we're baby steps. We're walking. We're learning how to walk, learning to stand up and deal with various situations within this material world. The modes of material nature are very strong. So, just quickly, in the 11th canto, I don't have the time right now, I guess. I think it's the 13th chapter. The Kumaras came to Lord Brahma to ask him about the ultimate goal of yoga. And in it, I'll just read one or two quick verses and you get the idea that it says here, so Krishna is talking to Uddhava. This is in the Uddhava Gita, but this is a section called the Hamsa Avatar. My dear Kuvera, this is Krishna speaking to Uddhava. Oh no, Uddhava is saying to Krishna, my dear Kesava, at that time and in what form did you instruct the science of yoga to Sanaka and others? I now desire to know more about these things. Yeah, so here, before that, it says, although intelligence of a learned person may be bewildered by the modes of passion and ignorance, he should again carefully bring the mind under control by clearly seeing the contamination of the modes of nature. He does not become attached. A person should be attentive and grave and never lazy or morose. Mastering the yoga procedures of breathing and sitting postures properly, one should practice placing the mind in me at dawn, noon, and sunset, and thus gradually the mind should be completely absorbed in me. The actual yoga system as taught by my devotees, headed by Sanaka Kumara, is simply this: having withdrawn the mind from all other objects, one should directly and appropriately absorb it in me. So then Uddhava wants to know, well, how did this come about? How did you instruct him? And then Bhagavan, Krishna, says, the Supreme Personality of God said, once the mental sons of Lord Brahma, namely the sages headed by Sanaka, inquired from their father about the difficult subject matter of the supreme goal of yoga. The sages headed by Sanaka said, O Lord Brahma, people's minds are naturally attracted to material sense objects, and similarly, the sense objects in the form of desire enter within the mind. Therefore, how can a person who desires liberation, who desires to cross over activities of sense gratification, destroy this mutual relationship between the sense objects and the mind? Please explain this to us. And then so, as described, this is Prabhupada's purport, as described above, as long as one is a conditioned soul, the modes of material nature, manifested in the form of sense objects, constantly disturb the mind, and by their harassment, one is deprived of the actual perfection of life. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead tells Uddhava, Brahma himself, who was born directly from the body of the Lord, he actually has a spiritual birth. He wasn't conceived. He came out of the lotus flower from Vishnu's abdomen. So he has a transcendental birth in that sense. My dear Uddhava, Brahma, who is born directly from the body of the Lord and who is the creator of all living entities within the material world, being the best of the demigods, seriously contemplated the question of his sons headed by Sanaka. The intelligence of Brahma, however, was affected by his own activities of creation, and thus he could not discover the essential answer to this question. So here's an example where he was asked by his sons, the Kumars, what's the ultimate goal of yoga? And he just realized that I've been so busy creating, and I'm doing my service, but I'm in touch with this material energy and the mode of passion, and he didn't have a clear mind. So then he takes shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord. I was going to read more of it, but we're out of time. But you can get it. It is in the 13th chapter. And you can. Is it 13? Yeah. And you can read it. It's about 26, 25 verses, and the purports are really brilliant. And
What canto is that?
Huh?
What canto?
11th.
No.
Yeah, I've stayed away from the 11th and 12th canon, but now I'm gradually coming around to the reading and studying them. And I happen to be going through this point.
The purports of those are not by
No.
Prabhupada.
No, but you can see, because they're drawing from the same source, the same big book that Prabhupada had. So it's, Vishwanath Chakravarti and Bhakti Siddhanta, things like that. But you can see when there's, this other personality's got a little bit in there. But they're well done. And also Gopi Pranadhana, what's his name? Is it Gopi? What was the one?
That's it.
Gopi Pranadhana. He did most of the real work on these things. Hridayananda was, in charge of that program. There was someone else before, as well as Gopi Pranadhana. And
I just thought you said Prabhupada purport. And
no,
so
did I? Maybe I did. I just said purports, I think. But
I did the same thing, and I gave class
Yeah.
in Mumbai, in Delhi one time. I've been giving class there for a while, and I was really enjoying it. And I was reading from that kappa. I just, purport by His Divine Grace of the Prabhupada, and it sounds just like Prabhupada. You wouldn't know the difference.
Yes, that's
so
true.
But we all do that.
I could have said it, but it's on the tape. Can someone turn that off, by the way? We've had enough of it.
It doesn't matter. It may be
Anyway.
my mind saying it too.
So I should finish there. But so here's another example, and it's not actually a fall down, but he's not clear. It's like all of a sudden you come up to a senior devotee, and then he's so busy with his mind, and it's like, what?
He's depending on Krishna.
He's depending on Krishna, and Krishna immediately appears as a swan, a beautiful swan. And what's the significance of that? The significance is a swan has the ability, apparently, to drink milk. To drink them, if its milk is mixed with water, it can take just the milk and leave the water behind. So in this case, the milk represents the spiritual, and the water is the gross material energy. So it can separate and only take the spiritual essence out of everything.
Mm-hmm.
So he Vishnu appears and instructs Lord Brahma and then Sanaka, the four Kumars. And this way they get the knowledge on their Sankhya philosophy, analytical, and also Ashtanga Yoga. Yes.
I was thinking earlier you were speaking about the fall down issues, and one thing is that the victim of that many times are the people who have the faith
Yes.
in the leader or whoever that falls. So it's like as you mature in spiritual life, it's like very incumbent upon the message to be put out there, at least, that we should have firm conviction in the Supreme Lord and His pure devotee, Srila Prabhupada and other pure devotees. But our faith should be ultimately in Krishna and His pure devotee. And if we take shelter of other, and they have a temporary fall down, whatever, that we should understand, like in the case of Lord Brahma, that the mode of passion was there, and because Lord Brahma had to work in the mode of passion, it's a difficult, it's a tough,
Yeah.
it's a dangerous world, But
Yeah.
even we saw Lord Shiva, I wanted to say this too, and when he saw Mohini Murti, Lord Shiva you
Well,
know,
that was Krishna.
he lost it
That
too,
was,
you
it
know.
was Krishna. That,
Yeah,
and
but
said-
it's Krishna, but I'm saying that
Yeah,
material
yeah.
energy is
Yeah,
also
yeah.
Krishna's energy, but
But that's why we have gold.
yeah, the point being is that anyone is subject unless, like Prabhupada always pointed out, we have to stay in association of devotees and, you know, always working together cooperatively, always having firm faith in the instructions of Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and Krishna and the pure devotee. Personalities and under the influence of material nature, as great as they may be,
Right.
as great as they may be, as Lord Brahma, this is a message,
Yeah,
can fall down.
that's right.
They can fall
Yeah,
down.
but Prabhupada said he's praying every day that it doesn't fall down.
Mm.
And he said, I can be in a room with naked women and not be attracted. But he said, also said that one time he was sitting on a bench next to this woman, and he chanted Hare Krishna very loudly.
Mm.
And I think he said that she was a prostitute or something. Not that all women are prostitutes, but and he felt like this was a awkward situation, and he just chanted really loud.
Mm.
So, but also it's just, Krishna protects you at the same time. There are different situations that, you get real close to making a mistake, and all of a sudden, boom, the devotees come.
And the verse in the Bhagavad Gita too that I think should be brought into the context is that even though one creates the most abominable action,
Right.
because he's rightly situated, he's saying, then it should not be taken so seriously, So that's another part of it. If somebody has a fall down, the tendency of the conditioned soul who is not very advanced or understanding the nature of spiritual life, they just completely freak out about someone having made a mistake, even though they may themselves do it all the time or have done it or whatever. Right. But that it's a mental thing too. But we have to gear back to that. Sometimes people are going to have some inebriety, some incongruity that occurs in their association with the modes of material nature. But if they're sincere, they come back. So we have to love each other enough on the basis of sincere desire to serve and please Krishna and Prabhupada, that we do not just discard someone when we see some flaw.
Exactly. And this is the thing that I remember specifically after, this happened with the gurus. At that point, then a lot of them, they kind of left the association. And I'm thinking, this isn't right. This isn't what the point is. These men were really, they were outstanding disciples of Srila Prabhupada. And we lost all that knowledge that they have from their own personal experience. Like Prabhupada said, when he looked out at all of us, he said, I don't see any one of you that has all of my qualities. But I do see a little bit of me in this one and that one. This one's like this. And if you work together, then you can have like the same energy. So, how do we
You can imagine, just imagine how they must have felt that Prabhupada personally pointed them and put them on this high road.
Yeah.
How egotistical that can be. I mean, even if somebody says, you gave a good class, immediately you start, having to deal with that pride of, oh, you gave a good class, or you did this, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So they were in such a high position. And Lord Brahma now, I can imagine the ego that goes with being Lord Brahma.
But the thing is that what's nice is that it's the way he received it when he saw Marichi and the others praying for him. He understood. And I can tell you from personal experience, and I'm not trying to, but not just, I know of devotees, one person even wrote a letter, but it was pretty obvious that, if they had just taken a little bit of advice from God Brothers, instead of trying to imitate, they could have, just followed Prabhupada. You're in the house of the founder Acharya.
Right.
And go at it, because Prabhupada started, when I first joined the movement, there was not a daily Guru Puja. What we would do is, you have Mangal Artik, and then in Atlanta we had a different program than Brooklyn did. But there was this thing called Prabhupada is Coming, and it was right before the greeting of the deities. So somebody would yell out, the temple president said, Prabhupada is coming, Prabhupada is coming, and you hear the door shut, like that's where he's staying. And then the temple president walks down like he's walking with him. And then they get up to the temple, and then, the curtains would open, and we had all that frankincense and myrrh on the black charcoals, all the smoke come bellowing out. And then it goes, Prabhupada, Prabhupada, and everybody pays their bits to stove, and then walking back to the Vyasa sign, and then put a few flowers. There was no like artik or. Sometimes we would re-sing the samsara. I would sing samsara, and then I'd say the English translation. Then you'd sing Mahaprabhu here, and then you'd say the English translation. Vishnu John used to do that sometimes.
The point too is that in the early days, right after Srila Prabhupada left, right, during that period you're talking about, the Japtak Maharaj was here, and he said something. I have firm faith he's a pure devotee, so I'm not criticizing in any way, but he said, now that Prabhupada's gone, we become gurus in our own right. And when I heard that, it just hit me like a ton of bricks, because we're so attached to Srila Prabhupada, right? I mean, Prabhupada's our life and soul, and that's, I thought of another guru, it was just unbelievable. That's why all the Ritviks came in. But I'm saying, later I talked to Srila Japtak Maharaj about it, and I said, Maharaj, there were some things that were said that hit me wrong,
Me too.
I didn't, and he looked at me very seriously. He said, we made some mistakes.
Yeah, and the
we
thing
made
is,
some mistakes.
and that's the point. And they could say, but it's like, so there were mistakes made, and we also will make mistakes. But there were people, even if they did things right, they were going to make it wrong. There's a difference when you're saying something from within that out of love, and not to bring them down because I want this position. They had this. There are people that think that if I get a position in the corporation, I'm spiritually advanced. That is not a sign of spiritual advancement.
You could see the symptoms of like people who were immature, unqualified to be on the level of that level of spiritual leadership. You could just see they weren't there yet. But because when Prabhupada was here, the Shakti of Srila Prabhupada was so great. Everybody, like when Krishna left, Arjuna was defeated by a bunch of infidel coward.
Right.
So it's the same way when Srila Prabhupada left, these great souls who had taken so much Shakti. I know when Srila Prabhupada left, I was useless. I was finished. I didn't know what to do. It took a while to get your bearings, because whenever the Acharya leaves, things get screwy for a while, and that people they don't talk about that enough, that there was that period after Srila Prabhupada left. We lost our way, we didn't know what to do. Prabhupada was gone. Before that, everything was rectified when you got to see Srila Prabhupada again, you got to see Prabhupada again. He straightened you out, your heart was clean, you were fired up again, and everything was about hearing about Prabhupada, but
there was no mourning. Like I went to I had to because I was the president at the time. So in 1978, the Mayapur meeting, which was, you're always supposed to come as the president and GBC. You go for the GBC meeting and the International Tevin President's meeting. And this was the first one after Prabhupada's disappearance. Now they may have been in India and they've already decided things, but they never, what the procedure had been before Prabhupada is that the GBC would meet and then they would send in a representative with the resolutions, and the Tevin presidents would have a few days to go over them, and then make suggestions, and then make some of their own, and then back and forth. This was, we don't need a meeting with the Tevin presidents. We've already decided everything. We're the pure devotees, and that's it. And then the next day, I see two of them on Vyasa signs already. They've had Vyasa signs made a little bit smaller than Prabhupada's, and they're accepting dozens of disciples, and it's like a dagger. I mean, I'm not envious of them being gurus. I wanted them to succeed, but they had no sense of what we were going through. They didn't grasp.
I'm just saying, the point being is that it was destiny that Prabhupada picked up, and the way he explained it before was when somebody would fall down, spiritually. He said, when you're in warfare, you have casualties.
Yeah.
It's a spiritual warfare against Maya, and Srila Prabhupada was our general, right? And so everybody was taking shelter. It took a while now we should be at a point now where, and I believe we are within ISKCON, where people are recognizing, Srila Prabhupada's eternal. He's always existing. He's always there for you. He never quits being there for us. Any disciple, any devotee in ISKCON can take shelter of Srila Prabhupada. He's an eternal divine person. So that we have to understand more and more, not the Ritvik concept, but the concept of the eternality, divine nature of the Acharya within ISKCON. I think that's becoming more emphasized. And then, the people who are, representing Srila Prabhupada have been weaned out little by little. The ones who I knew right in the beginning, I saw some of them. I thought, that's really kind of weird the way they're acting. They're taking it too amateurish or like they're a celebrity but then you saw the winning out. So what happens within ISKCON now, you're getting more and more like boiling the milk, Prabhupada called it, and the milk boils over, but it keeps getting more and more sweet. So we've become much sweeter. So if people look back and these people who are outside of ISKCON, they still think ISKCON when they left. They don't realize ISKCON has become, like you see some of these devotees like Bhakti Raghav Maharaj, right?
Right.
He's an incredible spiritual saint. I mean, I've been around people and I don't just lay out things like that. He is like, you could feel the Shakti and the purity and the spirit, and he's just a humble little Vaishnava sannyasi going
Not a big gun.
Yeah, not a big gun. And you have these more like, I'm talking about manifesting these qualities of a great Acharya, pure devotee. He's like an unbelievable Vaishnava. Right. And these other devotees, the Vadanaths and all these. So, it's winnowing down, the boiling the milk, it's getting sweeter, it's kind of becoming a more spiritual organization. And then Prabhupada knew all this would happen. Prabhupada knew it would happen. Before it happened, he knew what would happen, but he said, I'm going to give it anyway.
Right. There's another, I'm glad you mentioned Radhanath, because I just happened to see this, not that, within the last 12 hours or so. I had trouble sleeping last night. This actor named Will Smith, I don't know if this is an old YouTube thing or it's recent, I don't know. It said it was, on one thing, it was from a podcast, I forget the name of it, and it was in April of 2021. And then another thing said in October. And he's talking about the Bhagavad Gita. There's this other person who's obviously a devotee, but doesn't show, doesn't have the clothes. And they're both, and he starts mentioning Radhanath. But he gives this really far out explanation of Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I've seen clips of it.
Is it old or is it recent?
That's it's not too old, but it's like a couple of years back.
A couple of years.
Yeah.
It is really fired up, talking about the perplexities of life, and Arjuna is in this perplexity.
Well, he did a movie about it. Called Bhagavans.
Yeah, but I didn't see that. I saw the movie, but I didn't see how that was about it.
Oh no, it was all about. It was Arjuna. And if you watch the scenes where he's talking, it's amateurish, but it was decent. And it was obviously it was a portrayal of Krishna and Arjuna on the battlefield. That's what it was.
That's what I told him, but I.
Yeah, it was tough. You had to look deep,
but
it was there.
Apparently, his daughter did some recordings with what's her name?
Johnny Harrison.
Johnny, yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's really nice. I mean, he's really speaking nicely about the Bhagavad Gita and about Krishna.
That's going on. The movement is. The thing is, at some point, we're going to wake up one day and we're going to realize Krishna's God. Srila Prabhupada's Krishna's pure devotee. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared 500 years ago and created this movement, and we're part of a movement of a Renaissance that's going to become a golden age.
Yeah.
And one day we're going to realize, hey, there's going to be people
becoming
devotees, like Prabhupada said, don't be surprised. Don't be surprised who comes in the future. They're very, very advanced.
But also, like in Germany, the Prabhupada, when he was there, I heard this German devotee talk about this just recently in a recent memories. And when Prabhupada came to visit I think it was Frankfurt, and it's when Hamsadutta was in charge, and they had gotten a castle, and Prabhupada said to them right as he left, he said, "Be careful, you're becoming too successful, the government may come and shut you down. Something like that.
Hmm.
And the devotee's saying, we heard him say it, but we didn't really understand. He said, I just recently listened to this lecture as he was departing, and he warned us. And then, because a few months later, they came in with machine guns and the whole bit, and closed down the temple and went into their books. The Catholic Church or the whatever church, was very envious of their success. And so when you get, just like now they're saying that, Yogendra said in the Sunday feast, that Jayapataka Maharaj mentioned that there's some kind of pictures being made of the TOVP with minarets. That's the Muslim things, those little towers, instead of the domes that we have on it. So the more you get successful, and this is something the Muslims have done throughout time. Constantinople, that was a big church in Turkey, and they took it over, and it's a big mosque now. And so that's going back hundreds of years.
Let them try now.
Yeah, exactly. Nishingadev
Let them try now. The tables is turned.
But the thing is that still running, that thing? That little box? Right there.
Oh, that. I'll check.
I think it's, up over here we have. Yeah, no, let's stop.
Still going.
Okay,
You'll be
so up
stopping
here
all right.
is where you stop, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I just hit pause or something.